Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
Today we conclude our conversation with Marty Skovlund.
Being inconspicuous with a camera. Tell me some of those things that have happened in the past, as far as like you got to be pretty cued in on, pulling that thing out at the wrong time, but can ruin what you're trying to do in the long run. But also, it's something you have to be aware of constantly.
Yeah, because it's constantly at the forefront of what you're thinking about, as far as like, I don't want to be the reason that these guys find themselves in a bad situation. You're a fucking guest, so you want to make sure. And again, you have a responsibility to do your job, and you're there for a reason. But you're trying to do as little impact as possible to their operation, their mission. And so when it came to being at this, this rendezvous where the vehicles were at, where the militia leader and his guys were meeting us at, and they were, if I remember correctly, they wanted Cotton, the pseudonym we're using for the team sergeant. They wanted him to call in like a medevac for their injured guy and stuff. And it's like, you can't do that.
What happened to their guy?
Well, they had one guy killed. They had one guy injured pretty good. I think there were some other ones with some other minor injuries. And so the one guy, they just had their 18 Delta, the doc, to the team, like patch them up pretty good and stuff. But like these guys were furious and, wanted them to call in like a helicopter because they were there to help the Americans. Yeah.
So this group that this guy was a part of, and they were down in the little village from where your guys' S&O point was, correct?
Yeah. It wasn't, I don't even know if you'd really call it. There's buildings there, but I'm not sure it was a village.
Did they have any attached U.S. forces with them, or was it just them?
No, we were all up top, and then they were down below.
Okay, so they were... From
what I understand later on, this same ODA went back down below. Because, again, this was just to go see what was...
Right.
This is just a go take a peek sort of thing. But obviously I wasn't around for those later missions. But yeah, so these guys that came in on the ground, they took all sorts of fire down there. You immediately, when things started kicking off, like explosions were just echoing throughout the valley. And it was when we were trying to leave that IED went off, actually. And you see it in the video where they're like, oh, that was a ways away. It's like, no, it's right there. You'll see it in the video if you watch it. And so those guys, that they hit that IED on their way back out. My first thought must have been a remote det. The ISIS fighters must have been waiting for these guys to get in, so that the only way out through this valley was to go through the IEDs that they would remote det. That's what I think happened. I don't know what the official line on that was, but that was what seemed like what was going on. So
yeah, and so this part made the final cut, but this leader is all up in arms, and you're like, I kind of need to get this footage.
Yeah, but you got to do it in a way that is, it probably wouldn't be smart for me to be running up in a dude's face, putting a camera in his face after he just lost one of his buddies. You're already coming off that adrenaline high from combat, like it just wouldn't be smart. So, that's why like one of the SF dudes was like, hey, like either don't film or just be like super inconspicuous, just kind of like he wasn't like telling me what to do, but he's just like, hey, play it cool. And I was like, yeah, roger that. And so I just pretty much kept it, the camera, I, checked the great thing I love about that Sony is it's got that little flip up screen, so I could kind of look and see how I was framing stuff up, and my focus wasn't working exactly how I wanted it to at that angle, because it likes to focus on faces and stuff, and I wasn't close enough to the screen to be able to do a good manual focus on it. And so you're just doing the best that you can in a situation like that, right, to try to get what you can. And, I wish I would have got better footage of that to really show, like, hey, the human toll of war, affects everybody. It's not just us. It's like, hey, these guys fucking get pretty bent out of shape when they lose a dude too, and I wanted to be able to capture that. But you had to be smart about it, and ultimately I still felt pretty good about getting what I got.
Yeah. So we've spent a couple days going through the edit process with the second part of this video series, and the original, the Valley Boys article came out a couple months ago.
July.
All in, like, give me some thoughts with, this was a successful overall in a multimedia aspect. What's like the big takeaway from this for you specifically?
Like the overall embed or the...
Well, the embed plus what you got out of it.
Yeah, I think, the overall takeaway, and I guess I really haven't thought about it until just now, but like, I think the big thing is like, if you work hard enough at something and you really want to do this sort of work, I think you can find your way into it, and you got to make sure that you're ready when opportunities come to be able to seize those opportunities. Because look, I would have never forgiven myself if I would have went out on this and had this amazing access to go out with these guys and then just fucked it all up and not gotten anything usable out of it, and and it's like, then you come back and go do the edit process, and I would have hated it if it was like, we just don't have anything to work with here. That would have been fucking terrible. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, you practice with your camera ahead of time. You know where all those dials are. The fact that you brought up me getting stills, getting video, getting slow-mo, all that, like, that's because I fucking practice with my camera, like as much as a soldier would do mag changes or practice battle drills. Like, you need to know your equipment so that when the time comes to use it under stressful situations, maybe that's not a firefight. Maybe that's like, if you're a photographer shooting a wedding, like, that's stressful because, like, if you fuck that up, like, there's no redos, there's no reshoots on a wedding.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when you're doing your job is not the time to figure out that you don't know your equipment well enough. So
you feel like a lot of those the ethos as far as work ethic that you abided by in the military and mastery, those things have just carried over into your current, and that's more of a staple and foundational thing of how you go about business.
And this is like a kind of like a bigger philosophical point here, but like, look, dude, I was not like shit hot in the military. Like my time is there. Like, I joke a lot about, like, there were the Matt Bests in the Ranger Regiment, and then there were the Marty Skovlunds. Like, and I was better by the time I left than I was when I first showed up, and whatever. But my point being here is that I hope I'm a better fucking writer than I was a Ranger. You know what I mean? I hope I'm better at what I'm doing right now than I was in my last profession, because hopefully, as you move through life, you're getting better and better and better. It shouldn't be like, I peaked as a Ranger and now I'm just a mediocre fucking video guy or a mediocre still or storyteller, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully I am getting better and better, and I'm building on every single experience. That attention to detail that I got hammered into me in Ranger Regiment, and that idea of train and know your equipment, care of equipment, all that sort of stuff. Like, that definitely is like with me today. Like, I check my stuff over and over and over again before going out on these things. I do PCIs on my equipment, and it's one of those things that I just but yeah, I definitely think that, like, I'm trying to be better at this than I have been at other things in my life, and that means that I need to actually be putting in that same effort plus some of what I did before. Like, that's the way I see it.
Did you expect, or when you got out of the Army, did you have that clear-cut vision of, I'm going to get into the media business and writing business in a sense?
No. When I got out of the military, is because I wrote this thing called The Ranger and put up on Facebook about, this is like 10 months before
you wrote it.
Just fucking working my way through a 6-pack, not unlike this.
While you were still in?
Yeah, I was a recruiter up in New York, just nostalgic about my days in battalion. I had this reoccurring memory that I just ultimately thought was like, would be good to probably put down on paper, and pulled my laptop open, wrote that thing, and I was like, oh, this is like not bad, and I think I put on like Facebook or something like that, and ended up kind of going like viral through the Ranger and to some extent the larger military veteran community, because it reflected a lot of their experiences, just like a short little page and a half thing. And before I knew it, I had like people hit me up about like, you should put that on a poster or t-shirt or something like that. And so I started a company, did really well, and well enough that led me getting out of the military when I didn't plan to get out of the military.
And what company was that?
It's called Black Side Concepts. And when we started like a blog for the company, and then I really like writing, and then we ended up doing this fundraiser where we like hitchhiked around and hopped coal trains, like did a documentary about it, and fucking documentary won the GI Film Festival. And we did a narrative short film, and that won a film festival. Like, oh man, I really like doing this stuff, and it just was more and more like kept getting more and more exposure to it, to where I found out like, oh, I like doing this storytelling stuff more than I do like running a business.
So did you have any formal education?
No. The peak of my education is high school. I think I took one or two like college classes while I was active duty. Those like from like one of the online like places that are frequented by guys looking for promotion points, know?
Yeah. So all of this has been just a pursuit of passion, so to speak.
Yeah, dude. Like I use YouTube. I research relentlessly on stuff. Like when I want to get good at something, I research relentlessly. Like when it was time to, figure out how to edit on Premiere, is like, all right, let's watch nonstop tutorials on different techniques of editing on Premiere. When it came time to like, get a professional camera, I watched probably 15 different videos on people that were doing like unboxings on YouTube of this camera, and like, hey, this is how I set up my camera, and this is why I did these settings, because I didn't know what any of those, like, what does 24p mean? What does 60p mean? Like, I didn't know what any of that shit meant. So I had to watch these videos and learn, and then you go out in the field with these and stuff, and like I like some of those like family vlogs that I did was like, okay, let's see what this looks like when I go take it out. Let's see what this looks like when I edit it. Let's see how I can make it. I had some people that I was looking at that I aspired to be or were learning from. I watch a lot of Peter McKinnon's stuff on YouTube as far as video and photo stuff, and dude's like got really good stuff as far as like, yeah, he's like a professional, but he also breaks it down to like a very easily digestible, like, here's what you actually need to know how to do this.
Break it down by style.
Yeah. So so I've learned from, and then I've just being around people that are better than myself. Like I constantly, that was a large part in me coming to Black Rifle, was like, I need to be around people better than myself. I got a lot out of my time at Task and Purpose because I was around guys like Adam Linehan and Aaron Gell and some of the other folks that were involved there that were like better editors or better writers than myself, and it made me better at what I do. I'm here and I'm around guys like you, around Richard Ryan, around guys like Alex Miller and these other people. Like, these are people that are better in different things than me, and that I'm, by being around you guys and seeing how you guys approach stuff, even as we're working through the edit on this Afghan part 2 piece that we're doing, like, it's like, okay, these are how people who do this professionally approach these edits. This is what they're thinking of. This is what they're looking at. I need to make note of that because these are things that I need to take note of in future edits, like, and so I think that's a big part of, like, outside of just like formal education or watching YouTube videos, like, surround yourself with people that are better at whatever you're trying to do than you. Even like the people that we bring on, like, at Coffee or Die, like, I'm looking for people that are better than me at my shit. Like, there's somebody that I'm trying to bring on as a managing editor right now. She has a very impressive resume. She's probably more qualified than me to do my job. Like, but that's the thing, is like, you should be surrounding yourself with people better than you.
Yeah.
Like,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's better for everybody. It's better for everybody. And it keeps you competitive. Like, if you're not being competitive with your trade, then I don't know, man. I feel like you're missing out. I think you're missing out on professional development. I think because competition, it engenders innovation, right? Like, we got to the moon because we were trying to beat the fucking Soviets, right?
Yeah, and especially now, like, we're such a numbers-driven society with social media, and anybody can get a Google Analytics account and they can see how much traffic that they drove back to their website, and they can play the AdWords game, and there's a million ways to track and put check marks in the box as far as whether or not this thing was successful. I think you were telling me we did this. You went and you did a short piece with Travis Pastrana on that big, the record-breaking jumps that he did in Las Vegas not too long ago. It was live on the History Channel. Black Rifle has a pretty close relationship with Travis. Super cool event, like paying homage to Evel Knievel. In general, it kind of brought two generations together as far as like our parents' generation and then our generation and below us, in theory, would perform very well. And you had this thing, and it's Travis telling the story about how these jumps came to be, and then how 3 came to be, and then doing them in the bike, and like it's a really cool, in-depth kind of little sit down with them, and you do a good job of telling the story. Well, the video didn't perform, view count wise where the Afghanistan video did, but you look at it and then it's like, well, we attach all these links to everything that we do so we can have these conversations about, well, is this thing successful? How could it have been better? And we come back and you're like, well, I remember you telling me, you're like, well, it didn't really do anything, I got, a few 10,000 views. And I'm like, well, true, but that piece of content also showed up on the tracker as far as one of the highest conversion pieces traffic-wise to the site for the week. So, I mean, it's all in the scope of how you look at it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, there's a million things, and not everything that you make is going to be a viral thing.
Yeah. And I think that's being realistic with expectations on, like, for anybody that's a creator, you have to be realistic with your expectations on, like, not everything that you do is going to be a home run. It's just not problem.
Right. Well, especially with the way that the algorithms are now on social platforms, every platform wants you to participate more in that platform than they do the other platforms. So all of them have built into their algorithms that frequency is a really big factor into what you're doing and how your videos are performing. So it's this really fickle game that we're constantly playing. Well, this video is not going to get hundreds of thousands of views. Do we still run it? Well, per what we're seeing with the algorithms, yes, we do. Mm-hmm. And then you have to do this pro and con analysis as far as like, well, it drove thousands of conversions over to the website. Was that worth it? Well, yeah. Per CPM. Stuff like that. It did. It absolutely did. And the amount of time of work that went into it, and like having the ability to go back and do this, and then, there's all these things, you can get 20 million video views on a video. Well, what if that actually didn't do anything outside of, people enjoyed watching that video, but did people do anything afterward? What happened afterward? You know what I mean? Like, we have these huge in-depth conversations about top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. There's so many needs for everything that's going on. That's why I love Coffee or Die so much, is like it's really hitting all these different markers, especially when the podcast is up and humming. It's like audio, reading, visual, content across the board on this huge spectrum, and that's the way that it needs to be. It's super difficult to manage and participate in, and that's kind of what I was wondering as I'm talking through this, is like you are the manager of this thing, but you also are the best contributor, and I think it's difficult. Like, how do you manage and maintain and
not very well
work through this? Like, well, it's kind of like being the left brain and the right brain, right? I know you as a human, like, you still have to be creating.
I don't think I'm that person that's ever going to be able to be like, look, ultimately that's why I left like Black Side and doing all that stuff. I was like, I want to go create, not run a business.
Right.
That being said though, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't just be a pure creator and not worry about metrics, not worry about ROIs, not worry about building the brand as a whole. And for me, it's like, with Coffee or Die, it's like, well, we need to bring on good writers and other good storytellers onto this, because if it's just a one-man band, like what are we really doing here? What's really, and what do I have to point at as far as the larger thing that I'm part of? Because otherwise it's just the Marty Skovlund show, and that it shouldn't be that, and that's not very interesting. Whereas if we can build something that is a platform that people recognize as like, I can go here and find great stories on a variety of topics, and I'm either going to be informed or I'm going to be entertained, or maybe I'm going to be a little bit of both, and the way I see, because of the fact, like with Coffee or Die, we don't run any op-eds or like opinion pieces on it. I think it's a little bit of a fucking oasis in the internet world today, where you can go there and just like, hey, I don't got to worry about like somebody's opinion being shoved down my throat. Like, there's so much vitriol out there these days. Like, can't we just have a good story? Can't I just sit down? Like my goal with a lot of these stories is like, if you sat down with like many people do, they sit down with their phone or their tablet at breakfast, whatever in there. It's like the modern version of sitting down with the morning paper, right? And you're scrolling through your phone and stuff. My goal is that if you're come across one of our stories, that while you're, having that morning cup of coffee and you're fucking getting through your eggs and your bacon, and the amount of time that it takes you to get through that is also about the amount of time it probably takes to read one of our longer stories. Hopefully you come away from breakfast full, caffeinated, and feeling a little bit more enlightened about the world. I don't want to put out like clickbaity stuff. I don't want to get you fucking angry and your blood pumping in the morning about like, this guy's opinion. I just want to tell a good story.
Well, see, I love hearing you say that, because it's the opinion of so few creators to like, when you think about the purpose and they talk about the purpose of what they're trying to do, is there's so much self-righteousness within what they're creating these days. To hear you say, I want people to be enlightened.
Yeah.
Who says that, and who is not only saying that but actively trying to provide that to their listeners, their readers, their audience? It's super rare, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely easy to fall into that trap of like, well, like the op-ed stuff and the opinion stuff. It's super low-hanging fruit. You can get people riled up and you can get the views. It's guaranteed. Like, look, I know how to make viral stuff. I just choose not to go down that road a lot of times, because I think it's a lot harder to make something that contributes to society or makes the world a little bit better place and goes viral.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Without a doubt.
There is a formula for making something go viral. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's not as easy to do something.
Yes, absolutely. Like, once you get to that point where you are a creator, you have created something that has gone viral, and then it's like a different layer of the onion is peeled back, and then you are enlightened as to how and why that thing happened, right? Mm-hmm. Going into, you brought up low-hanging fruit, like, the guy in the car ranting about a hot topic in the news. Like, that's a perfect example of that. But just like you're seeing, like, it's easy to do that. It is super easy, especially in this day and age, especially with the amount of people that have voices, with the way that the news is shoving media and current events down your throat 24/7. It is really easy to be upset about anything.
Yeah.
And to say it in what you are perpetuating when you are doing that is an upset state.
Yeah.
To where everybody, and if you think about that in the greater whole and more about what is the purpose of the content that you are putting out into the world? Well, like, so 90 million people see your video, mm-hmm. but everybody's reaction to that video is anger and upset.
Or outrage.
Yeah. That trickle-down effect is, it's unpredictable, because there's a couple options. So 90 million people, half of those people, 45 million, they more than likely will go out and they will perpetuate that upset state of mind, that mentality a very few amount of people will try and change and do something about what you were ranting about. You know what I mean? I think people understand and they connect to ranting because they feel like they need to do it, and it's a release for them. But my issue with this is that if everybody does that, the larger web, and I'm making this awesome motion with my hands right now as it extends out, is like, does that do anything good for us as a species?
Are you expanding anybody's view on the world? Because the big thing about like the rant or these highly charged pieces is a lot of the reason they do really well is because people have one of two reactions. Either this guy is an idiot, he doesn't know what he's talking about, this is an embarrassment, like blah blah blah, or it's on the other side, it's this guy gets it, we need more people like this guy, he totally gets it, because they whatever niche of that person they're following is totally confirming what they see about the world. I would love to be able to be the guy that, and I have been this guy on certain pieces that I've written and things that I've done, but I like being the guy that comes in and says like, okay, you think that way about this thing, but have you thought about it from this perspective? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that maybe it's not as simple as you're making it out to be, you know? And we do that a lot of times. I grew up in a very small town in South Dakota, and, you know, like my family, we didn't have a lot of money. So like we didn't go on vacations around the world or anything like that. Like what we knew was South Dakota and a little bit of Minnesota, you know, like that was our world, you know, and there wasn't a lot of exposure to a lot of things. It's a very, you know, and I'm not talking bad about the area or anything like that. It just is what it is. And so I'll get into these conversations to this day with like my mom or my sisters about like things that I've seen or done, or where they'll have a view on something. I'm like, well, think about it from this way, or put yourself in their shoes, or think about it like, you know, like what led to this, you know? And it's just more about like, I like giving context. I like giving nuance. I like challenging preconceived notions that are simple to arrive at. I rarely argue with people that have a very well thought out opinion, but there's not a lot of those floating around.
Well, you don't know what you don't know.
And that sounds elitist. I don't want to sound elitist, but you know what yeah.
Well, you're pretty fancy.
Pretty fancy.
I feel like you would do very well, and I can imagine you in like, you know, some polished khakis, and you've got that shotgun over your shoulder, and you got your pup, and you know you're on the cover of like one of those, you know,
LL Bean magazine.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Trim the beard up a little bit.
That's the problem, is I look homeless half the time.
Well, you don't have time to not.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, it's rough. But no, that's the goal with a lot of the stories that we do, and a lot of things that, like, I know some of the things that we do are not going to be viral sensations, but I do know that it's something that I can point to and say, look, we've got a diverse set of content that we're putting out. We're not catering just to what we know will do well.
Yeah, it's, you know, it begs the question, like, is it better to piss off 100 people or open the eyes to one?
Yeah.
That is a great question to ask. And I'm looking forward to this, you know, constant state of enlightenment that we're going to continue to go through with Coffee or Die, because, you know, specifically when you start looking at the Valley Boys and the perspective that you offer up, and why I like that one section of it that I read is like, nothing has changed from the concept of these guys who carried 6-shooters for a living and were cowboys and adventurers on the open plains, and the guys who are now in ODA teams and doing dangerous things in different countries.
Frontier's all the same.
It is, and it's a mind frontier, and it doesn't matter. Like you can constantly be also mentally stimulated by what you're doing with your actions. And I think if we're, and you are providing this thing, was like, you're thinking about this, you're not okay with the status quo, you're going to take that extra step and provide something that nobody else is providing, and that it's no different than providing a superior product as a company in the form of a physical good. Marty Skovlund is in the business of providing a mental good that should improve your life. And that's why we buy high quality products, is to improve our life.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what you're doing in the form of digestible content.
That's what I aspire to do.
Yeah. And it is a good life path. Like it's admirable, it's noble work. And it's something of a pride point, specifically here, because that's exactly what we're doing in the greater scheme of things.
Yeah.
So, getting back to specifically what you like to do and the specifics of what you do, like, you're so capable of doing so many things. Is there a fallback for you? Like, if you go to this location and you look at this story and, you got video, you got a written story to provide, you've got a podcast to do, is there one thing that kind of tickles your fancy more than the other stuff these days?
Yeah, I mean, it changes all the time, but I'd say right now I definitely am really kind of into doing some experimental, like, photography stuff. And I don't mean experimental in the larger form, experimental for me, in that it's not just a regular photograph. It's like, oh, let's play with like a 30-second exposure. Let's play with some star trails. Let's do some, some different things with photography. Like what makes a good portrait? Like, there's some portraits that you see and it's just like, oh, it's just a picture of a person, but it's not. There's something more to it that you can't quite put your finger on. And so I'm really, like, right now, as far as something that, like, just is kind of like tickling my fancy, as you say, like, it's, yeah, I'm trying to take some really good pictures right now. I'm feeling pretty good about the stuff that I'm writing. Video, it's just a continual, daily, gradual improvement. There's no large leaps and bounds I've taken with video. It's been just, I've gotten to a point where I'm pretty good with what I have to work with, at least, like, I don't have cranes and shit to, like, do big sweep. Like, it's just, like, I know, like, well, I got to get a little bit better with the drone, and I'm still kind of mastering using a little handheld gimbal and stuff like that. Like, there's little things that I have stuff to do, but like, photography is something that I'm, like, just, it's, like, fun to try stuff out with it right now.
Well, it's simple too. It's perspective with one thing, like what you say with the gimbal. Like, there's a million variables involved, a drone, with how to figure that thing out. Like, you've got a controller, you've got to deal with elemental factors, you've got to know pans and tilts and all this different stuff, as opposed to mastering something so simple as putting your eye to a device and then it captures a single frame of time.
Trying to tell a story within a single picture.
Yeah,
which sounds like very, like, artsy fartsy, but, like,
well, no, I mean, look at that. Those things shape who we are as a species.
Mm-hmm.
Those things that mark time and parts of our history.
Mm-hmm.
It's streamlined, and anybody can provide it now. That's what I love about where we are with technology. Is I think, for the most part, everybody having the ability to record and capture things, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think everybody having the ability to throw their opinion all over the internet is not necessarily beautiful.
It's just one of those things where it's like, I love that they have the option and the freedom to, but I hate that they so ruthlessly exercise it. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like, oh, let's take a step back and just think this through a little bit. It's like, who's the first to...
I had a thought. It needs to be on the internet.
Now. Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I started off in a place, too, where I was probably a little bit like that, where I was throwing out my opinions on Facebook left and right. But I'm, as you grow and you get older and mature and you see more of the world, it's like, okay, pretty well aware right now that I don't know everything. And that a lot of times my first take on something, the hot take, as it were, is not usually right.
Well, no, and that's the way we want to be, is because reacting quickly to something can be so rewarding in the sense of social media, but in reality, it's not. That's not where the value lies in what's going on with the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because of all the different stuff you've done. Like you had the opportunity to like specifically speak to audience in the form of hosting in a TV show that you did. Was it a couple of years ago now?
We filmed it 2 years ago.
And it was
came out like 6 or 7 months later. Yeah.
It was all filmed in the New Orleans area.
No, so the show was there was some other parts that I didn't do part of it. So I was like one of 3 hosts for it, and there was 2 parts that I didn't go. One was in England, one was in Moscow. I didn't go on those 2. The ones that I did do were New Orleans, Mexico City, Southern Florida, like Miami area, and out in California. So yeah, it was, cool experience, and got to see how like I said, I'd done like documentaries and stuff like that before, but they were all very much like indie sort of productions. This was like, okay, this is what a like professional TV show looks like when it gets shot, that's going to go on a major network, and it was great to see it. And I made great contacts with other professionals, again, people that I learned with and learned from as far as how to do this stuff. And like, this is what this is how you set up opposing shots. This is the relationship and movement between an A cam and a B cam. This is, the range of a lav mic, just these little things that you kind of pick up, and like, this is how the producer interacts. This is, because there's not really a director for TV. It's just producers.
So even though like you were a host of this, listening to you talk, do you feel like you have a studious type mentality whenever you go to this stuff? Like you're eventually going to the treasure trove every time you have an opportunity like this?
Oh yeah. If you're not like, for somebody that wants to work in the the storytelling arena, when you're able to get exposure to a different form or higher form or whatever of storytelling, it's like, oh shit, like I got to take advantage of this, because you don't know when it's going to come around again, and sure as shit, like that's the last TV show I've done, hopefully we'll get involved in some way or another in future things, but like that was my, for the time being, that's the only time I've been on a large production like that. And knowing that might have been the case while I was doing it, I soaked up as much as I possibly could.
And it was, you'll have to excuse me because I haven't seen it. It was an investigation into the JFK assassination.
Yeah,
correct?
I was trying to retrace Lee Harvey Oswald's steps.
Okay.
Like, what was he? It wasn't so much like, did Lee Harvey Oswald do it or anything like that. It was more of a, what was he doing in that 6 months leading up to the assassination, and retracing his steps, talking to people who knew him back then, going to all these different places. And it was me, a former CIA officer, Bob Baer, who a lot of people, if they watch like Tim Kennedy's Hunting Hitler, Bob was on there. Look, I had auditioned for other shows before and thrown my hat in the ring with other shows, but this was the first time that I guess my number was picked, and got to go out there. But yeah, it was like, with Bob Baer from Hunting Hitler, Adam Berkovici, who was a former LAPD guy, and then me, and I think I was just kind of like the token tactical dude, to talk about stuff, which again, you could probably find better guys for that. But
did you guys, all in all, did you discover anything? Was there any insight for you?
I think I learned a lot personally. I don't know that a lot of the stuff that we did was like super groundbreaking.
Who do you think killed JFK?
I think Lee Harvey Oswald definitely did the physical act of killing him. Who he was involved, he definitely, one thing I walked away from that is like, he definitely was not alone. Like, he definitely did not just come up with this on his own, plan it on his own. Like, no, I don't buy that at all. But that being said,
do you think he was a tool?
Yes, I think he was a useful idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that 100%. And people talk about like, I mean, you know, like you're a former Marine, like there's like a mystique that people have about Marine Corps riflemen, and that the Marine Corps very much propagates. Like they make it kind of seem like every Marine is a sniper, and we know that's not the case. Like there's probably some shit shots in the Marine Corps. Like,
For sure.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But so people think of Lee Harvey Oswald of like, oh, he was a Marine and all this other stuff. And it's like, no, like he wasn't a bad shot, you know, but the shot he was taking was not a hard shot. It wasn't, they're like, he was driving, he was a moving target. Dude, he was crawling.
Well,
I've hit deer running a lot faster than
that's
that.
what, you know, just it's kind of been a curiosity point just for my family in general. I feel like every time I go home and, you know, we're sitting around the dinner table at holidays, like we always end up talking about JFK. I haven't been to the actual site, but the thing that always struck me as a Marine, as a shooter, was he didn't take the easiest shot. If you're just doing it as far as like if you're trying to make sure that you get away, you're trying to make sure that you have the best shot, he would have took the shot much sooner. As JFK was coming directly at him, there's far less variables, there's far less movement in your rifle.
This is again why I say he was an amateur. You're looking at it from a professional shooter. I don't think he was a professional shooter. I think he was an adequate shooter.
Right, but even the baseline, he definitely shot at moving targets at that point. I think that he would have, and I'm not saying he was a particularly smart individual.
And he didn't land every round. From 80 yards away, he didn't land every round.
Well, he was shooting, you know, a lateral target, as opposed to shooting something that's coming directly at him, which would have been much easier. And
significantly easier.
The opportunity that he had, minutes before, but he waited.
Do you think that there's a little bit of jitters there? Do you think there's a little bit of, do I really want to go through with this? Like, I don't know. I'm just posing the question.
You know, it's a good question. I think if you have a rifle in the book depository.
Was he late getting up there?
That's a good question. You've obviously thought about this.
I don't have the answer for these questions either.
Do you think that you don't think that he had been sitting up there for a while?
I don't know.
What was the evidence that they found? Was there any anxiety markers around from where the shot was? Was there scratches in wood? Was there cigarette butts?
Nothing I'm aware of.
And the biggest thing when I think about it is it would have given him, from appearances, such a better avenue of escape if he would have taken the shot a lot sooner.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. And again, I think that's coming from somebody who's a professional shooter and, you know, has had professional training. I don't think.
So do you feel like you got a good concept of his mental state?
Yeah, the guy was a few screws short.
Yeah.
For sure. That IKEA set didn't come fully assembled.
Or with all the parts.
Yeah, like the guy was searching for something, I think, in life, and just stuff wasn't lining up for him. And I think people who are professionals at finding marks, you know, finding the right person for the job that suits their needs, I think he was identified early on as somebody like, that's our guy. He's capable enough to do what we need him to do, but he is dumb enough to not blow our whole or understand our whole concept of the operation. You know what I'm saying? And I think there were multiple people.
Think about it. We're talking about this. You're asking me very simple, rational questions, and it's bringing up very good points in the sense of like where there's just a question in mental state, and it's like if you're like, the guy wasn't there, I'm not really surprised at that at all. Well, that kind of throws you logic, common sense isn't an argument anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the thing is you can't look at it with too much, like giving him too much credit. I don't think he was a particularly impressive human being.
Yeah.
You know, I think that the people that were probably, you know, again, using him were probably pretty smart folks. we still don't have a definitive answer. That's enough proof right there to show that they weren't that dumb.
Why do you think all the documentation surrounding that got pushed back another, 5 years?
They
released
released a huge trove of it a year ago, I think.
There was a bunch that from my understanding, it was all supposed to come out last year, and a lot of it didn't. They said another 5 years. And there was some, at the time, there was some interesting speculation as to whether or not this was tied around Trump, because it was the same time.
I honestly don't know, but I also know, just having dealt with the government and things like that, that there's things that I won't be too specific here, but there's things that get held back that make no sense to hold back, to keep covered up. So I don't always know that it's a nefarious plan on the government's part to hold something longer too. I think it's something that maybe if you knew the real reason, a lot of the times you'd just be like,
probably.
Really?
Well, it's exactly what we were just saying with Lee Harvey is we want to believe nefarious means, because that's in a way it's an understandable justification, as opposed to incompetence is a really hard pill to swallow. Mm-hmm. It's not something you want to do. Do I just want to sit here and just eat the fact that the guy that assassinated JFK was just incompetent. He was incompetent at being a human.
Yeah.
That's it. It doesn't. Nobody gets anything out of that. I think that's why we gravitate towards conspiracy theories as humans. Is like we want to believe that there's something else going on, because gross incompetence is such a hard thing to deal with.
Put it this way, just to illustrate how incompetent he must have been, he walked into the fucking Soviet embassy in Mexico City and wanted to become a spy for them, wanted to become a source. And they brought him in, they interviewed, and they deemed him completely unsuitable to use as a source. This is at the height of the Cold War. This is very soon after the Cuban Missile Crisis, height of the Cold War. And they're like, yeah, bro, you're... we can do better.
Yeah.
Thanks, but no thanks. Sends them right back out the front door.
We have nothing that we can get from you. Yeah, that for sure says a lot.
And
how desperate is he at that point if he's going...
That's what I'm saying.
...to fucking Mexico City to try and...
Good story about that when we did the show. The hotel that he stayed at there, we went over to we were going to go film, get a hotel room and feel like, oh, this is where he stayed, and do a little segment there.
Yeah.
And we knew going into it, we're like, it's on, just outside of the super safe part of Mexico City, where it's there's large parts of Mexico City that are great. Highly recommend going out there. It's great. There's also some places that I would not recommend you go to. And this place was just right outside of the safe zone. And we're like, it's a hotel, and we knew going into it that it was the sort of hotel that you rent by the hour. And we're like, whatever, maybe we'll see a few prostitutes or something. But either way, really production-wise works out great, because we only have to pay for an hour instead of a whole night at this hotel,
yeah,
kind of fucking works. So we have a security guy with us, and we're going to go do this thing, and it's just me and 2 camera guys and the producer in the car. And we've got a security guy with us that's a local hire, and he's got, he's armed. He's the only one armed out of all of us. And me knowing it's just a little bit of a shady neighborhood, I was just thinking proper security measure-wise, all right, let's put him out a few blocks ahead of time so that he's not hopping out of our car. Then his cover's fucking blown, because we're in a blacked out fucking SUV, So we put him out a couple blocks ahead of time. He walks in on foot and just kind of hangs out. We come in. Well, this street that we turned down, it's like none of the buildings are marked. So we have the street address, but we're not sure which one is the right one. So we drive down the street kind of looking, and we identify the one, but it's just too late to stop. We had to go like flip a loop around and then park. Well, what we didn't know at this time as we were flipping a loop around, lady came out of the hotel like, they've got fucking cameras. They've got cameras. And some guys came out on the roof with AKs. Some guys came out on the street with pistols, and we're just waiting. So when we came back around, and they were told, like, as soon as they get out of the car, light the car up. As soon as those doors open, light it up. We come around. We didn't find this out until afterwards from the security guy, but so we're in just blissful ignorance right now. It looks like a little bit of a sketchy neighborhood, and, we park, and the producer's like...
How did they find out that... How did this chick know that you guys had...
She could see him in the... Because they're not small little DSLR cameras. They are...
Oh, you recorded as you rolled past.
Yeah.
Oh.
We didn't have the windows down or anything. They could just see through the tinted windows that they've got big, rigs on their shoulders. So.
Yeah.
So, that and it's a blacked out Suburban, like, it draws attention.
Mexico's kind of fucking crazy.
Yeah. So we park, and we have to film this quick little segment where I explain what we're getting in to go do. And right as I'm about to, like, open the door handle, we finished filming that segment part. I go to open the door. Security guy, like, gets the driver gets a call on his phone. He's like, oh, it's a security guy. And we're like, oh, okay, let's see what he wants. It might be pertinent to us going into this hotel room. And all of a sudden, like, we hear this guy, like, talking really fast on the other end, like, faster than, like, usually when you hear, like, Mexican guys talk, it seems fast to us English speakers. Like, but this was, like, faster than normal. And he, like, the guy that he's talking to that's in the car with us, the driver's like, oh, yeah, the security guy says we shouldn't go in. And we're like, why? Like, what? Like, what's the reason? He's like, he says it's not safe. And we're like, well, what's not, like, again, we don't know what's going on outside of us. Like, what's not safe mean? Does this mean like we're going to go and they're going to ask us to leave right away or something? Like, if so, then great. That's great for TV to go in there and then be asked to leave. That creates tension and fucking awesome, And we're like, ask him what's the problem. He said, and then he's like, no, you have to leave now. Don't open your doors. And we're like, and we like deliberated for a second. Like, the producer wanted us to leave right away, but I was like, like, what's the worst that's what's the worst that's gonna happen? Like, this seems ridiculous. It was not my smartest moment. And so ultimately, the producer's like, no, like, let's leave. Tell the security guy to meet us at this intersection.
How far away are you from the front of the hotel at this point?
20 feet. We're parked on the same side of the street.
So
like
you've got,
feet.
At this point, you've got guns trained on you, and
we don't know that. Yeah.
But they're just, as soon as Marty Skovlund opens that door, you're...
Yep. They're going to just shred that car. Yeah. That's all they're waiting for. So we tell the security guy, like, hey, meet us a couple blocks down. We'll pick you up there. We get in, dude, this security guy, cool, calm, and collected all week with us. Looked like he'd seen a ghost. And that's when I knew, like, at that moment, I was like, okay, holy shit. Like, something bad was going on. Turns out this hotel is not just a pay by the hour, whorehouse or whatever. It's one of the trafficking centers for the cartel to human traffic, like underage people.
Yeah.
So that's why they were going to, like, I don't think they would give a shit about, like, if it was just your typical whorehouse. Like,
right.
It was because of what they were doing would have been gotten, you don't want cameras around that.
How did you guys put that info together afterward?
It didn't make the final cut of the show.
Yeah.
Apparently, what we were told by the producer, it didn't. What we were feeling in the car didn't translate on camera. Like, the tension didn't translate. So, I don't know. But we got back and, we asked the security guy. He's like, yeah, and that's when he told us about the guns and all this other stuff and everything like that. And we had to do evasive. We were followed out of there. We had to do, like, evasive driving to get out of there. And the rest of the time. So we get back and one of our ACs he speaks Spanish. So we have him talk, because our security guy only speaks, like, broken English. So we had our AC, who's American but speaks Spanish, talk to him like, hey, find out exactly what happened. And that's when he told us about, like, what they were doing there, all the stuff that was going. He's like, yeah, you guys like just about died today.
Lee Harvey Oswald almost got you killed.
Man, the fucking...
The
Marty Skovlund's arrogance just about got him killed. That's what it was. Not listening to the fucking... Like, oh, it can't be that bad.
Well...
Dumb.
Yes. But... It's also, it's one of those, like, brave things. Like, oh, I can handle whatever. Yeah, it's kind of, like, part of the...
It's like that part at the end of... Inglourious Bastards, where Brad Pitt's like, "No, I'll get yelled at. I've been yelled at before."
Yeah.
That's kind of how I looked at it. Yeah.
Well, Marty, it's been a pleasure, and I'm super excited to see what comes out with Coffee or Die, and we will definitely be doing these things, and I can't wait to see what's down the pipe and what other dangerous, dumb circumstances you find yourself in.
As long as it ends up on camera, right?
Yeah, exactly. If it doesn't get recorded, it didn't actually happen.
Exactly.
So finish this off with where everybody can find you at and what they can expect to see in the near future.
So by the time you're hearing this, the new Coffee or Die website will be out, so you can check out coffeeordie.com. We're doing great stuff, and Black Rifle in general is like, we're crushing it with all this stuff. So definitely check that out. You can check out Coffee or Die Mag at Coffee or Die Mag on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that sort of stuff. You can find me personally at Marty Skovlund Jr. Have fun trying to spell that. But you can find me on all the usual suspects for social media too.
Well, thanks for coming, Marty.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.